All right, so you are a high school student or middle school student sitting there, and you're like, "Hey, I met this guy or girl, and they're really cute, they're really funny, super athletic. So I'm kind of digging this person. The only thing is, they're not a believer, but that's not a big deal, right? I can still date them, right?" Wrong.
Wrong.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Back to the Basics. We are continuing our series on dating and relationships. Claire, today we're going to tackle the question, should I date someone who is not a Christian?
Yeah,
What do you think? Should
I
do
think
it?
it's such a good question. I think it's something that we hear a lot from students because it's easy to, you meet somebody, they're super nice, they're friendly, you think they're really cute, and they've got all these personality traits that you just really dig, and then you find out that they're not a Christian, and then it's like, I don't know what to do here. So I think obviously the first place that we need to start is with Scripture, and so the first verse that I think of when we think about this topic is 2 Corinthians 6:14, and that says, "Do not be yoked together with unbelievers, for what do righteousness and wickedness have in common, or what fellowship can light have with darkness?" And so this idea of being yoked together is not something that we're super familiar with, but in Bible times, in their kind of agrarian community, they would have been really familiar with this topic. So basically what this looks like is they would have oxen that they would use to plow their fields so they could get the soil all ready and stuff. And so the yoke would attach the oxen together, so it was kind of like a bar that would go across their backs and attach them together. So you don't want your oxen to be unequally yoked. You don't want one of them to be stronger than the other. You don't want one of them to be taller than the other. You don't want one of them to be faster than the other. You want them to be roughly equal, right, in that. And so what Paul's saying in this passage is that we as believers in our relationships, we need to be equally yoked. We need to be of the same mind, going the same direction together, so that we're not fighting with each other, that we're moving smoothly and effectively as Christians.
Yeah, that's really good, Claire. So you might be sitting there thinking, okay, so you're saying I shouldn't marry someone
Right.
that is not a believer, but we would go ahead and say that since dating is a road that you get on that is maybe going to lead to marriage, and it should be working that way, you should not date someone who is not a believer. I think another reason for this is the purpose of marriage is for the couple, the man and the woman, to give glory to God through their relationship. People should look at that couple and say, this does not make sense the way you love each other. I mean, the husband sacrificially loves his wife and the wife sacrificially loves her husband. Why is this? And then the couple could say, hey, it's because Jesus has loved us in this way. How will that work if, let's say, you're a guy who ends up marrying a girl who's not a believer? That sacrificial love will not be there. We can see this in the Bible where, the church is called the bride of Christ.
Right.
And so marriage should point to Jesus. You can't do that when not man and woman are believers. So, Claire, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Romans 8:28 says God's going to work all things out for the good of those who are called according to his purpose. So let's say I'm a guy who's interested in a girl and she's not a believer. I can still date her and just hope she becomes a Christian through dating me, right?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a dangerous question to ask, and I think it's one that's common, so it's okay if you're asking that question.
Yeah.
But we need to not make the rule out of the exception. So there are exceptions where that has worked out, where there is a believer who started to date a non-believer, and that non-believer has come to faith through that. But we want to make sure that we're not just saying, oh, well, maybe this could possibly happen, because it also could possibly end up really in a bad situation where you've ended up breaking up or something like that, and that non-believer that you started to date has gotten hurt because of your relationship, and so that could cause them to even move further away from the Lord. And so I think it's good to just say, hey, what if we can just be friends? And I think it's awesome to develop friendships with people who don't believe in Jesus, and to try to, share the gospel with them through that, instead of getting your heart and your emotions so involved. And that just makes it really complicated and really messy to deal with that in a dating relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our question is, do you want to be with somebody who just tolerates your belief, or do you want to be with somebody who fully understands, supports, and lives out and agrees with your beliefs? I think that is the big question we have to ask, and think about how it would affect a potential future marriage. So,
boom. Yes. Well said, Claire. All right, well, this has been another episode of Back to the Basics. Comment what you were learning, and we will see you later this week. Thanks so much for sticking around with us.